Poor girl sent a message to a millionaire CEO by mistake, asking for money to buy milk for her baby, and what he did surprised everyone. Before we begin the story, leave a comment telling us where you're watching from. And at the end, don't forget to rate this story from 0 to 10. Enjoy. The rain hammered against the window like a broken typewriter, and Sarah Collins had officially hit rock bottom. Her tiny apartment in Dorchester felt even smaller, with bills scattered across the kitchen table and her baby's cries echoing through the rooms. "It's okay, Lily. Mommy will fix this," she whispered, rocking her 6-month-old daughter in her left arm while opening the fridge with her free hand. Empty. Completely empty, except for an expired jar of mustard and 2 limp carrots that looked like they had given up on life. Sarah sighed and grabbed her cracked phone. She had one last option, though she hated to admit it. She typed quickly, not even checking the number. "Dad, I know we haven't spoken in months, but I need help. Lily is out of milk, and I won't have money until my next paycheck. It's only $50. Please." She sent it before she lost her courage. 2 minutes later, her phone buzzed. "I don't think this message was meant for me, but are you okay?" Sarah frowned. The reply came from an unknown number, and it definitely wasn't her father's cold tone. She typed back, "Sorry, wrong number. But it might as well be Santa Claus's phone, because I really need a miracle right now." The answer came almost instantly. "Ho ho ho, where do you live? I've got some extra gifts lying around." Sarah laughed for the first time in weeks. At least the stranger had a sense of humor. "Dorchester, 147 Elm Street, Apt 3B. But seriously, I'm sorry to bother you. Tough days make us do strange things. Don't apologize. I'm on my way." "Wait, what?" But there was no reply. Sarah stared at her phone as if it had grown legs. Who was this crazy person, and why had she just given her address to a complete stranger? 20 minutes later, someone knocked on the door. Sarah peeked through the peephole and almost dropped Lily. On the other side stood a tall man in a flawless suit, carrying grocery bags. He looked like he had stepped right out of a business magazine. "Who is it?" she called out, not opening the door. "Temporary Santa. I brought milk, diapers, and a few things I thought you might need." Sarah slowly opened the door, leaving the chain on. Up close, he was even more handsome. Dark hair, piercing blue eyes, and a smile that looked more expensive than her rent. "You're completely insane," she said, but unlatched the door anyway. "Thank you. But this is a little scary. What if you were a villain?" He laughed, deep and genuine. "Villains don't usually show up with formula and hypoallergenic diapers." Sarah picked up one of the bags, surprised. "Wow, you really came prepared. This must have cost a fortune." "Don't worry about that." He stepped inside, looking around the small but tidy apartment. "Beautiful daughter." "Thank you." Sarah rocked Lily, who had stopped crying and was now staring at the stranger with curiosity. "Today I only needed hope and milk. You brought both." "What do you mean, hope?" "Well, it's not every day you ask the wrong number for money and the guy shows up at your door like Santa Claus in a suit." Sarah chuckled, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "I'm Sarah, by the way. And this is Lily, my most honest critic." "Daniel." He extended his hand, and when she shook it, Sarah felt a spark run up her arm. And from the looks of it, she approves. Lily had indeed stopped crying and was smiling at Daniel. Traitor. "So Daniel, what do you do when you're not rescuing single mothers in distress?" Sarah asked, preparing a bottle with the milk he had brought. "I work in business." "What kind of business? The kind that lets you buy groceries for strangers without thinking twice?" Daniel laughed nervously. "It's complicated." Sarah studied him as she warmed the bottle. A suit that cost more than her car, a watch that looked Swiss, the posture of someone used to being listened to, and that evasive tone when she asked about his job. "Wait a second." Sarah narrowed her eyes, taking a better look at his face. "You're familiar. I swear I've seen you somewhere before." Daniel shifted uncomfortably. "Maybe in a magazine? Or a newspaper?" "Newspaper?" Sarah froze mid-movement. The realization hit like a bomb. You're Daniel Brooks?" Silence filled the apartment like a storm cloud. If discovering Daniel's identity had been shocking, facing the Brooks Industries building in the heart of Back Bay felt like a punch to the stomach. The glass and steel building cut through Boston's sky like a blade, reflecting the clouds that still threatened more rain. Sarah adjusted her worn coat and took a deep breath, feeling the sharp afternoon wind strip away whatever courage she had left. "It's all right, Lily. Mommy will just go thank the handsome man and be back before you even notice we don't belong here," she whispered to her daughter in the stroller. The lobby was a symphony of marble and gold that screamed wealth. Sarah felt like a stain of ink on a white canvas. The security guards measured her from head to toe with looks that clearly said, "You got on the wrong elevator, dear." "Excuse me, I'm looking for Daniel Brooks," she said to the receptionist, a flawless woman who looked as if she had been carved from porcelain. "Do you have an appointment?" The voice came out as cold as the air conditioning. "Actually, no. But he knows me. I'm Sarah Collins." The receptionist studied her as if she were a puzzle with missing pieces. After a few whispered phone calls, she nodded toward the elevator. "40th floor. Someone will meet you." The elevator moved so quickly that Sarah's ears popped. When the doors opened, she almost stepped back. The executive floor was another planet, glass, leather, and dark wood that smelled of success and intimidation. The employees stopped talking as she walked past. Sarah could feel the stares clinging to her like gum on a shoe. "Is that her?" a woman in stiletto heels whispered. "Must be the new assistant," another replied, stretching the word as if it were contagious. "In those clothes? She looks like she just came from the real world?" Sarah interrupted, turning with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Because that's exactly where I came from. Don't worry, I won't steal anything, only pens. They have sentimental value." The group fell into awkward silence. Sarah pushed Lily's stroller toward what looked like the main office, where an impeccably elegant assistant was waiting. "Miss Collins, Mr. Brooks is expecting you." The double doors opened, revealing an office larger than Sarah's entire apartment. Daniel stood in front of the panoramic window, gazing at the city. When he turned, she felt that familiar electric current. "Sarah." His smile warmed the icy room. "I didn't expect to see you here." "Well, finding out that the temporary Santa Claus is actually the youngest CEO in Boston made my day a lot more interesting," she said, parking the stroller. "I came to thank you in person, and maybe understand why you did it." Daniel stepped closer, and Sarah noticed how different he seemed here. More imposing, more distant, as if the environment had turned him into a harder version of himself. Because it was the right thing to do. Rich men don't usually show up at strangers' doors with groceries. There has to be a catch. There's no catch. Daniel stopped right in front of her. "You looked like you needed help, and I could help, that's all." Nothing is ever that simple when you have more money than some small countries. Daniel laughed, and for a moment he was once again just the man who had saved her night. "Is it cold out there?" He noticed how she crossed her arms. "A little, but don't worry, I'm used to it." Without hesitation, Daniel took off his blazer and placed it over her shoulders. The gesture was so natural, so careful, that Sarah's heart raced. The jacket smelled like him, something expensive and masculine that made her head spin. "Daniel, you don't have to?" "Yes, I do." The door opened and two executives walked in without knocking. They stopped abruptly when they saw the scene. "Oh, sorry, Daniel," said an older man who looked as though he had just swallowed a lemon. "I didn't know you were busy." The tone carried insinuations that made Sarah shrink. Daniel, however, straightened and his voice came out sharp as ice. "Sarah, these are Richard and Tom from the board. Gentlemen, Sarah Collins." "The temporary assistant?" Richard asked, looking her up and down. "She isn't anyone's assistant," Daniel replied, stepping slightly in front of Sarah. "And I suggest you treat anyone who walks into this office with respect." Of course," Tom muttered, though his eyes said something else. "It's just that, well, appearances matter in this business." Sarah felt her blood boil. She was about to respond when Daniel spoke first. "This isn't about appearances. It's about courage. Sarah faces challenges every single day that you couldn't even imagine, and yet she's here, standing tall." His voice was low, dangerous. "If anyone has a problem with that, the problem isn't hers." The silence hung heavy in the air like molten lead. Richard and Tom exchanged looks and mumbled apologies before leaving. Sarah stared at Daniel, surprised. No one had ever defended her like that. "You didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did. And by the way," Daniel turned to her, and there was something different in his eyes. "How about a temporary position? I need someone I can trust. Daniel, think about it. You're smarter than half the people here, and definitely more honest than the other half. Sarah opened her mouth to protest, but no words came out. A job, a real job, in the most prestigious office in Boston. Let them be confused, she murmured. I don't care. Daniel smiled. So is that a yes? Before Sarah could answer, his phone rang. When he picked up, his expression changed completely. I understand. Yes, sir. Tomorrow at 9. He hung up and looked at Sarah with an expression she couldn't quite read. Change of plans. The board has called an emergency meeting. Looks like someone didn't like what happened here today. The Brooks Industries boardroom looked like a courtroom where ancient kings decided the fate of nations. The dark mahogany walls were decorated with portraits of stern men in golden frames, all staring down as if judging every breath. The conference table could seat 20 people, but at that moment, only 6 frowning faces studied Sarah, as if she were an impossible math problem. Gentlemen, Daniel began, standing at the head of the table, I'd like to introduce Sarah Collins as my new temporary executive assistant. The silence was so heavy that Sarah could almost hear her own heartbeat. Lily slept peacefully in the stroller beside her, unaware that her mother was about to step into Boston's most exclusive club. Temporary? A gray-haired man with a walrus mustache frowned. Daniel, you can't just… Yes, I can, Mr. Whitman. It's the CEO's prerogative to hire assistants when necessary. Sarah cleared her throat. Excuse me, but I haven't said I accept yet. All eyes turned to her. Sarah straightened, holding Daniel's blazer still draped over her shoulders. Are you saying you're turning down an offer from Brooks Industries? Asked a blonde woman with the air of someone who had never heard the word no in her life. I'm negotiating, Sarah replied with a sweet smile. I'm a single mother, I have conditions. Daniel crossed his arms, clearly amused. I'm listening. First, flexible hours. Lily comes first, always. Second, my neighbor Mrs. Rodriguez can care for her during work hours, but medical emergencies cancel any meeting. Third, fair pay, not charity disguised as a job. And fourth, Daniel asked, knowing there was more. I translate reports and baby cries. I'm advanced bilingual, Sarah said, making him smile in spite of himself. Oh, and I need written assurance I won't be fired the first time someone here dislikes my outfit. A younger man who had been silent until then leaned forward. There was something unpleasant in his green eyes. Interesting. And what would be your qualification to work at the most prestigious company in Boston, Miss Collins? Survival, Sarah answered without hesitation. I've managed a poverty-level budget for years, raised a child on my own, and still managed to sleep 3 hours a night and wake up smiling. If that's not a qualification for handling business stress, I don't know what is. Daniel stepped closer to the table. Sarah has a point. Besides, I need someone I can trust completely. Lately, that's been rare around here. The comment hung in the air like an accusation. Sarah noticed the exchanged looks, the tension that had nothing to do with her. Very well, Whitman said finally. If the CEO insists, but we want everything documented. Formal contract, trial period, monthly evaluations. Perfect, Daniel agreed. Sarah? She looked at Lily, then at the faces around the table, and finally at Daniel. There was something in his eyes that made her want to trust him, even knowing she was jumping off a cliff without a parachute. This isn't charity. It's partnership, she said, echoing his words from the day before. Exactly. Daniel's assistant brought the documents in less than 10 minutes. As Sarah read, she felt the weight of 6 pairs of eyes on her. The words danced on the page. Salary 3 times what she earned, cleaning offices, health benefits, career plan. Is this real? She murmured. Very real, Daniel replied, sitting beside her. Do you want me to explain any clause? When he leaned in to point out a section of the contract, his fingers brushed against hers. Sarah felt that electric current again, so strong it almost knocked the pen out of her hand. Must be that clean energy your company produces, she whispered, trying to cover the impact with humor. Daniel smiled, keeping his hand close to hers a little longer than necessary. It must be. Sarah signed her name with a slightly trembling hand. When she finished, Daniel placed his signature right below hers. For a moment, their hands touched completely, and Sarah had to remind herself to breathe. Welcome to Brooks Industries, Sarah. Thank you for accepting me, Daniel. The moment was broken by a discreet cough. The green-eyed man who had questioned her qualifications stood up. "Congratulations, Miss Collins. I'm Marcus Hale, Vice President of Operations. I'm sure this will be an interesting experience." There was poison in his voice, hidden under courtesy. Sarah shook his hand, noticing how he held it a little longer than was comfortable. "Mr. Hale, it's a pleasure to meet you." "The pleasure is mine. I hope you adjust quickly to our standard of excellence." Daniel stepped subtly between them. "I'm certain Sarah will exceed every expectation." "Oh, I'm sure of that too," Hale replied, though his smile never reached his eyes. "Well, I have to go. Important meeting in 15 minutes. As he left, Sarah felt a chill. There was something about that man that unsettled her. "Daniel," she began, but he shook his head. "We'll talk later. How about a tour of the office? You need to see your new territory." As they walked out of the boardroom, Sarah didn't notice Hale standing in the hallway, speaking quietly on the phone. "Yes, it's her. Daniel's new assistant," he said, watching them leave. "No, it won't be a problem. Find something in her past. Everyone has skeletons in the closet." Hale smiled coldly before hanging up, especially desperate single mothers. 3 days later, Sarah discovered that working for Daniel Brooks was like trying to solve a Rubik's Cube while balancing plates on her head. The cafe in Beacon Hill where they met to review reports smelled of roasted coffee and old books, the kind of place where famous writers probably scribbled masterpieces on napkins. Sarah arrived with Lily in the stroller and a pile of documents that seemed to have a life of its own. "If this latte costs more than diapers, I'm ordering tap water," she muttered, eyeing the menu with prices that could make a banker cry. Daniel laughed, already waiting at a corner table. "Relax, it's on me. Consider it part of your benefits package." "Benefits package shouldn't include drinks that cost more than my old rent," Sarah replied, but she accepted the coffee anyway. "So, what do we have here?" She opened the company's loaned laptop and started moving through the project's solar energy spreadsheets. Daniel watched her work, fascinated by how quickly she absorbed complex information. "Wait a second," Sarah frowned, clicking between tabs. "This number doesn't match." "Which one?" "The installation costs in Texas. Someone multiplied by 10 instead of dividing." She turned the screen toward him. "See? 17 million instead of 1.7. If you sign this contract with those numbers." Daniel stopped breathing. "We'll lose $15 million. Exactly. Or as I like to call it, enough money to buy diapers for every child in Boston." He grabbed his phone immediately. "Marcus? It's Daniel. I need you to stop everything on the Texas contract. Now. Yes, I know it's supposed to be signed today. Don't sign anything until I get there." He hung up and looked at Sarah with a mix of admiration and shock. "You just saved my company." "I only did my job. Though I admit it feels pretty good to find a $15 million mistake on my third day." Sarah closed the laptop with a smile. "Can I put that on my resume?" "Put whatever you want. You are officially the most valuable person in that building." They finished their coffee in a comfortable silence, with Lily sleeping peacefully between them. When they left, Daniel suggested a walk through the small nearby park. The wet leaves from the morning rain made a golden carpet under their feet. The benches were empty, and the air carried that clean scent that only comes after a storm. Sarah pushed the stroller slowly, enjoying the pause in the rush. "Can I ask you something?" Daniel said, walking beside her. "Of course, but if it's about my love life, the answer is, what love life?" He laughed. "Actually, I wanted to ask about Lily's father." Sarah stopped walking for a moment. "Oh, that's a short and sad story. He left when he found out I was pregnant. Said he wasn't ready for responsibility. Ironically, I wasn't ready either, but babies don't come with a pause button. I'm sorry." "Don't be. It was the best thing he could have done. Lily deserves someone who truly wants her, not someone who stays because he feels forced to." Daniel stopped and turned to her. "You're amazing, you know that?" "I'm a 26-year-old single mother who, until last week, cleaned bathrooms to survive. I'm definitely not amazing." "You raised a daughter on your own, you work harder than anyone I know, and you still manage to smile. If that's not amazing, I don't know what is." Sarah felt her face grow warm. "Are you trying to charm me with compliments?" "I'm just being honest." They sat down on a bench near a small lake. Daniel watched Sarah lift Lily from the stroller and hold her in her arms, The tenderness on his face was almost tangible. "She's lucky," he said quietly. "What do you mean?" "To have you as her mother." Sarah rocked Lily gently. "Sometimes I think I'm the one who's lucky. She gave me a purpose. Before her, I was just existing. And now? Now I'm living, fighting, building something." Sarah looked at him. "You're already part of my life, you know, in the strangest way possible." Daniel reached out and touched Lily's little face. She woke up and stared at him with those big, curious eyes. "Hi, princess," he whispered, and Lily smiled. "She likes you," Sarah observed. "And Lily is very particular with men. Maybe it's because you came with groceries, or because she recognizes people she can trust." The moment was interrupted by Daniel's phone ringing. He looked at the screen and frowned. Marcus again, probably wants to ask about the contract. But when he answered, the voice on the other end was tense. "Daniel, we have a problem. There are photos of you and Sarah going around on social media. Someone spotted you at the park. The captions are complicated." Sarah saw Daniel's expression change completely. "What kind of captions?" "CEO of Brooks Industries on romantic date with new suspicious employee. It's going viral." The next morning, Sarah discovered that being famous on the internet was about as much fun as being stung by 1,000 bees while wearing a dress made of honey. The lobby of Brooks Industries looked like a circus. Journalists with cameras crowded the entrance, and the cold October wind made the leaves dance like mischievous confetti around the chaos. Sarah held Lily tighter and took a deep breath before facing the storm. "Miss Collins, is it true you're having an affair with your boss? How do you feel about being called a gold digger on social media? What's your response to the accusations that you slept with Daniel Brooks to get the job?" Sarah stopped. For a moment, she considered going back home and pretending none of this was happening. But then Lily made a sweet little sound, and she remembered why she was there. "My response is that you should check the facts before spreading gossip," she said, pushing the stroller toward the elevators. "But I imagine that's too much to ask of modern journalism." Inside the building, things weren't any better. Employees stopped talking when she walked by, whispering behind folders and ornamental plants as if they were amateur spies. "I heard she came out of nowhere. 3 days in, and already saving contracts? Way too suspicious." Poor child. What an example, having a mother who climbs up in life like that. Sarah stopped in the middle of the hallway and turned to the group. "When I cleaned bathrooms here at night, I was invisible. Now, I'm guilty just for existing. Interesting how things change when you stop being convenient." The silence was deafening. Sarah kept walking, her head held high, even as she felt the tears burning behind her eyes. In the elevator, her phone buzzed. It was a message from the sister who hadn't spoken to her in 6 months. "I saw the news. Shame on you, Sarah. As if having a child out of wedlock wasn't enough. Now this. Mom is mortified." Sarah deleted the message without replying. Some people simply didn't deserve space in your life, family or not. When she reached the executive floor, Daniel was waiting with a worried expression. "Sarah, are you okay? I saw the reporters downstairs and—" "I'm fine," she lied, parking the stroller. "If they're handing out titles, I'll take diaper CEO. I've got experience." Daniel didn't buy the forced joke. "We could make an official statement. Clarify that our relationship is strictly professional." "Our relationship?" Sarah laughed bitterly. "Daniel, we don't even have a relationship. You help me, I'm helping you. End of story. You know it's not that simple." "Oh, isn't it? Then explain it to me, because apparently everyone else seems to understand something I don't." Daniel took a step toward her. "Sarah." "No." She raised her hand. "You're a millionaire CEO. I'm a single mom who found an error in a spreadsheet. This isn't a fairy tale, Daniel. This is real life, and in real life, people like me don't end up with people like you." "Who said that?" "The entire internet, apparently." Marcus Hale appeared at reception like a crow announcing a storm. "Daniel, we need to talk. In private." His eyes slid toward Sarah with barely hidden disdain. "About the delicate situation?" "Any conversation about Sarah can be in front of her," Daniel answered firmly. "Very well. Social media is on fire. Shareholders are nervous. There are rumors you're mixing business with pleasure, and it's hurting the company's image." Sarah felt something die inside her chest. "I should resign." "No," Daniel said at once. "You will not resign over gossip. Gossip that could destroy your reputation." Hale added, poison dripping from every word. Daniel, you need to think of the company, of your family, of the Brooks legacy. The Brooks legacy is built on integrity and merit. Sarah is here because of merit. People won't see it that way. They'll see a young, attractive woman who came out of nowhere and gained the CEO's trust overnight. Sarah grabbed her bag. There. Problem solved. I'll leave. Sarah, don't do this, Daniel pleaded. Do what? Be realistic? Accept that some lines shouldn't be crossed? She looked at him with tearful eyes. Thank you for the opportunity, Daniel. Truly. But it's not worth destroying your life. She picked up the stroller and walked toward the elevator. Daniel followed her. You're running away. I'm being smart. For the first time in my life. That's not true. You're just afraid. Sarah stopped and turned to him. Of course I'm afraid. Afraid that all this is too real. Afraid I'll wake up back in my apartment in Dorchester with no money for milk. Afraid you'll realize I don't belong in your world. You belong wherever you choose to belong. Beautiful words, but the real world doesn't work like that. The elevator doors opened. Sarah stepped inside and turned to him one last time. Take care, Daniel Brooks, and find someone at your level. When the doors closed, Sarah didn't see Hale smiling triumphantly behind Daniel, nor did she see him pick up the phone and dial a familiar number. Yes, it worked perfectly. She's gone. Now we can move on to phase 2 of the plan. 2 weeks later, Sarah was officially living like a hermit who made friends with washing machines. The 24-hour laundromat in Cambridge had become her nightly refuge, where the smell of detergent and the hypnotic hum of the machines drowned out thoughts of a certain blue-eyed CEO. It was almost midnight, and she was folding Lily's tiny clothes while reviewing reports on her personal laptop. All right, if I find one more accounting error here, I'll sue someone for negligence, she muttered to herself, adjusting the borrowed glasses from her neighbor. That's when the bell on the door rang. Sarah looked up and almost dropped the pile of clean baby clothes. Daniel Brooks was standing at the entrance, looking completely out of place in his $1,000 suit among the old machines and worn linoleum floor. Are you following me? She asked, trying to sound annoyed instead of secretly delighted. Mrs. Rodriguez told me where to find you. She said you come here every night after Lily goes to sleep. And you thought it would be a good idea to show up at a laundromat in the middle of the night because… Daniel walked closer, taking off his jacket. Because you still haven't returned the company laptop, and because I'm going crazy without you. Sarah's heart sped up, but she kept her expression neutral. The laptop is right here. You can take it. I didn't come for the laptop. Then for what? For this. He pointed to the screen, where complex spreadsheets glowed under the fluorescent light. You're working on our reports for free. I'm just checking a few things for scientific curiosity. Daniel chuckled and picked up a tiny t-shirt from the pile, folding it with the precision of someone who clearly had never folded laundry before. You're doing it wrong, Sarah said, taking the piece from his hands. Like this. Their hands brushed for a second during the handoff, and both felt the same electric spark, as always. Teach me? Seriously? The CEO of Brooks Industries wants to learn how to fold baby clothes? The CEO of Brooks Industries wants to spend time with you. The clothes are just the excuse. Sarah tried to ignore the way her heart was racing. Well, since you insist on being free labor. They worked in comfortable silence for a few minutes. Daniel was surprisingly bad at folding laundry, but persistent. With every failed attempt, Sarah laughed and showed him again, their arms brushing, their breaths mingling. So, she said, folding a yellow blanket, how's the company without its brilliant assistant? Terrible. Marcus took over your tasks and almost signed that troublesome Texas contract. Sarah froze. He did what? Fortunately, I remembered your warning and canceled at the last minute, but it was close. Daniel, you need to be more careful. Something's not right there. I know. That's why I need you back. We've already talked about this. No, we haven't really talked. You ran away. Sarah sighed. I didn't run. I was being realistic. Realistic would be you coming back and helping me figure out who's sabotaging the company. Sabotaging? Daniel pulled out his phone and showed her a spreadsheet. After you left, inconsistencies started showing up in the reports. Numbers that don't add up, contracts that were altered, someone's tampering with the data. Sarah studied the screen, her mind working quickly. These signatures… Daniel, this is forgery. Exactly, and you're the only person I trust right now. The weight of those words hung between them. Sarah finished folding the last piece of clothing and closed the laptop. Let's go to your office. I need to see the original files. At night, Brooks Industries' headquarters was a completely different place. The empty hallways echoed with their steps, and only the emergency lights cut through the darkness. Daniel used his access card to take them up to the executive floor. This feels kind of haunted, Sarah said, pulling a chair closer to his. A little, but at least there are no journalists. They sat side by side, so close Sarah could feel his warmth. For 2 hours, they went through documents and spreadsheets. With each discovery, they grew closer, their heads nearly touching over the screen. Here, Sarah pointed to a specific line. See how the font changes slightly? Someone edited this document after the original signature. How do you notice these things? A natural talent for being suspicious of everything, she replied, but when she looked at him, their faces were only inches apart. The air between them grew charged. Daniel's eyes dropped to her lips, and Sarah felt her breath shorten. Sarah? He whispered. Daniel. They leaned toward each other, the world disappearing around them. Their lips were just about to meet when Daniel's phone rang loudly, slicing through the moment like a blade. Both pulled back, breathless. Daniel answered with a rough voice. Hello? What? Now? His expression changed dramatically. I understand. I'll be there. He hung up and looked at Sarah with concern. That was the chairman of the board. Emergency meeting at 7 in the morning. About what? Daniel swallowed hard. About me. It seems someone presented evidence that I'm using the company for personal gain. If I survive this audit, I'm marrying a calculator. Sarah tried to joke, but it came out forced. Sarah, there's one more thing. Daniel looked at her seriously. The board is going to suspend me temporarily, and they want you there as a witness. If Sarah thought board meetings were intimidating, she quickly learned that board meetings at the Harvard Club were the corporate equivalent of being judged by angry Greek gods. The mahogany and leather room of Boston's most exclusive club breathed tradition and power. Portraits of men who had been dead for decades stared down from gilded frames as if silently approving the execution about to take place. Sarah held Lily tighter, feeling like David facing not one, but 12 Goliaths in suits. Daniel sat alone at one end of the oval table, looking oddly calm for someone about to be professionally crucified. Gentlemen, Mrs. Wellington, Marcus Hale began, flipping through a thick folder. Thank you for attending this extraordinary meeting. What I have to present today is disturbing. Sarah studied the faces around the table. Some looked genuinely concerned. Others clearly had already decided the verdict before hearing any evidence. In recent weeks, Hale continued, I have uncovered significant irregularities in Brooks Industries contracts. Contracts that were mysteriously altered to benefit certain personal relationships of our CEO. He slid copies across the table. As you can see, Miss Collins's consulting contract was approved without bidding, with a salary 300% above the market average. Wait a minute. Sarah stood up, rocking Lily. First of all, my contract was temporary and based on merit. Second, I saved the company $15 million on my third day. If that doesn't justify a decent salary, I don't know what does. Ah yes, the famous mistake that only you managed to catch, Hale smiled coldly. Interesting how you found exactly what Daniel needed to be found. Sarah felt her blood boil. Are you suggesting I invented a $15 million error? I'm suggesting that convenient mistakes happen when people get too close. Marcus, Daniel cut in, his voice dangerously low. Be careful with your insinuations. They're not insinuations, Daniel, they're facts. Hale opened another folder. We have photos of you on romantic outings, records of you visiting her apartment, evidence of blatant favoritism. Sarah studied the documents that had been handed to her. Something was wrong. The dates didn't match. Some signatures looked different. May I see the originals of these contracts? She asked. Why? Mr. Whitman asked. Because I'm good with details, and these documents have inconsistencies. Hale laughed. Of course you'll defend your beneficiary. Actually, Sarah said, focusing on a specific signature, I'll defend the truth. The signature of Daniels is forged. The silence was deafening. How dare you? Whitman began. Look here. Sarah pointed at the paper. The pen pressure is different, the angle of the letter D is wrong, and there's a small shake Daniel never makes when he signs. She looked straight at Hale. Who had access to these contracts after the originals were signed? Hale's mask slipped for just a fraction of a second, but it was enough. This is ridiculous. A cleaning lady doesn't have the knowledge to... An ex-cleaning lady, who's now an executive assistant, and who clearly pays more attention to details than the vice president of operations, Sarah cut in. He lies more than the Boston weather forecast. A few board members laughed nervously, but Hale didn't find it funny. Gentlemen, he said, regaining his composure, we cannot allow a temporary employee with obvious motives to distract us from the facts. Daniel Brooks violated the company's code of ethics. Based on forged documents? Daniel finally spoke. No, Daniel, based on solid evidence of misconduct. The chairman of the board, a white-haired man named Harrison, cleared his throat. We need to vote. All in favor of temporarily removing Daniel Brooks while a full investigation is conducted. Sarah watched in horror as 6 hands went up. Motion carried. Daniel, you are suspended indefinitely. Daniel stood calmly. I understand. Who will take over my duties? I will, Hale said, smiling like a shark that had smelled blood. How convenient, Sarah murmured. Hale turned to her. And as for Miss Collins, I suggest her presence in the company also be reconsidered. Why? Daniel asked, his tone dangerous. Because she clearly cannot maintain professional objectivity. She's a distraction. Sarah felt the words like a slap. You're not a threat, Sarah. You're a distraction. Marcus, Harrison interrupted. Miss Collins is not under investigation. Not yet. Hale replied, looking directly at Sarah. But I can arrange that too. The threat hung in the air like toxic smoke. Sarah understood perfectly. If she kept digging, Hale would find a way to destroy her as well. 2 security guards entered the room, clearly instructed to escort Daniel out of the building. Gentlemen, Daniel said, picking up his folder. You're making a mistake. The mistake was yours, mixing business with other matters, Hale replied. As Daniel walked past Sarah, he stopped and whispered in her ear, Trust me. Don't stop investigating. The truth is in the basement files. The guards led him away, and Sarah was left alone in the room with 10 hostile eyes and Hale smiling as if he had just won the lottery. Well, Miss Collins, he said, straightening the papers with obvious satisfaction, it seems it's just you and me now. Sarah discovered that being thrown out of one of Boston's most prestigious buildings felt surprisingly similar to a slow-motion walk of shame. The halls of Brooks Industries had never seemed so long. Each step echoed like a hammer, striking the tombstone of her professional career. Employees stopped their conversations when she passed, some whispering, others simply staring with that mix of pity and relief people show when they witness a car accident from a safe distance. Sarah Collins, right? A blonde woman from accounting blocked her path, smiling with false sympathy. I heard you're leaving. I'm being escorted out, actually, but thank you for the concern, Sarah replied, adjusting Lily in the stroller. Well, you had a good run. 3 weeks at the top must be some kind of record for people like you. Sarah stopped and turned fully to the woman. People like me? You know, outsiders. People who don't understand how things work here. I understand perfectly how things work here. Some people work, others sabotage, and most just stand by and watch. The woman blushed and quickly stepped aside. Sarah kept walking, ignoring the stares and whispers that followed her like a storm cloud. When she reached her small temporary office, 2 security guards were already waiting for her. Hale was there too, leaning against her desk as if he were the new owner of the place. Miss Collins, he said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. I'm sorry it came to this. You're not sorry at all, Sarah replied, grabbing her purse. You can drop the act. We both know what's happening here. I don't know what you're talking about. Of course you do. Take my badge. You won't take my truth. Hale laughed. Truth? Sarah, you are a desperate single mother who got involved with the boss. That's the only truth that matters. Sarah felt anger rise but forced a smile. If you throw me out, I'm taking this expensive chair with me. I'm a mother, I need furniture. One of the guards almost smiled, but quickly returned to a serious expression. I need to collect some personal documents, Sarah said, opening the desk drawer. The guards will supervise, Hale replied. Of course, Because I'm a dangerous criminal. While pretending to organize her belongings, Sarah quietly slid a few copies of important contracts into Lily's diaper bag. The guards were watching her, but baby bags were apparently neutral territory in the male mind. "Here's my badge," she said, handing over the access card. "My computer is clean. My drawers are empty. Can I leave now?" "Of course. But Sarah?" Hale stepped closer, lowering his voice. "If I were you, I'd forget everything that happened here. Sometimes it's better not to stir up hornets' nests." "Good thing you're not me, then." The walk to the elevator was the longest of Sarah's life. Employees stopped what they were doing to watch her leave, some looking genuinely sad, others clearly relieved. When the elevator doors closed, Sarah finally let the tears burn in her eyes. "Well, Lily?" she whispered to her daughter, who slept peacefully. "We're back to square one. But at least this time, we have some evidence." Outside the building, the November cold cut like blades. Sarah pulled her coat tight and walked toward the bus stop, ignoring the journalists still circling the area like vultures waiting for fresh carrion. Sarah Collins," a reporter ran after her. "What's your response to the accusations that you and Daniel Brooks were having an affair?" Sarah stopped and turned. "My response is that you should investigate the real culprit instead of chasing the victim. But I imagine that would require real journalism." Back at the apartment in Dorchester, Sarah sat at the kitchen table with the documents spread out in front of her. Mrs. Rodriguez had agreed to watch Lily for a few hours, giving Sarah time to think. She opened her personal laptop and began comparing the copies she had managed to smuggle with the versions Hale had presented to the board. The differences were subtle, but they were there. Slightly different signatures, altered dates, modified amounts. "All right, Marcus Hale," she murmured. "You're good, but you're not as good as you think." Sarah called Daniel, but it went straight to voicemail. She tried 2 more times, same result. Either he was being monitored, or he was avoiding contact to protect her. She decided to follow the hint he had whispered, the basement files. She vaguely remembered seeing an entrance to the basement during her tour of the building. If she could get into the building after hours, Sarah picked up the phone and dialed a number. "Tony? It's Sarah. Remember me? I used to clean the Brooks building at night." "That's right. Listen, I need a favor, a big one." 20 minutes later, she already had a plan. Tony, the cleaning supervisor, still had access to the building and owed Sarah a few favors from the days when she covered extra shifts for him. Sarah opened a folder she had taken from Daniel's drawer. Inside, she found a flash drive he had vaguely mentioned during one of their late-night conversations. When she plugged it into the laptop, her heart stopped. The file was called Insurance MH Score 2024.docs. MH. Marcus Hale. Sarah double-clicked and held her breath. Sarah discovered that Daniel's file was a digital nuclear bomb that could demolish Marcus Hale's career in about 5 minutes. The apartment in Dorchester was quiet, except for the hum of the old laptop and the distant sirens of a city that never slept. Sarah sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by piles of documents and a cup of coffee that had been cold for hours. What she found on the flash drive made her heart pound like a war drum. Emails. Dozens of them. All from Marcus Hale. To private.investors.overseas@, she read aloud. Subject, Brooks Industries Opportunity. The first email was from 6 months ago. Hale had been selling the company's confidential information to outside investors, including data on renewable energy contracts worth hundreds of millions. "My God," Sarah whispered as she scrolled through the thread. "He was sabotaging the company from the inside." The second file was even more devastating. A chain of emails between Hale and a lawyer who specialized in hostile takeovers. The plan was simple and ruthless. Destabilize Daniel as CEO, take temporary control, and then discover that the company was in financial trouble, forcing a sale for a fraction of its real value. Sarah compared this with the documents she had smuggled in the diaper bag. The pieces fit perfectly. The Texas contract that had almost cost $15 million? Hale had deliberately changed the numbers, hoping no one would notice until after it was signed. "Son of a," she muttered, then corrected herself. "Sorry, Lily. Mommy meant morally questionable person." She opened the third file and nearly fell off her chair. It was an audio recording of a phone conversation between Hale and someone identified only as JK. The operation is working perfectly, Hale's voice said through the headphones. Brooks is emotionally tied to the girl. That makes him vulnerable. And the girl? The other voice asked. She's smart, but she's just a desperate single mother. If she becomes a problem, I have ways of handling it. Sarah felt anger surge through her veins. Just a desperate single mother, she repeated. Let's see what this desperate single mother can do. She began organizing the evidence into a presentation, cross-referencing dates, amounts, and signatures. Every document Hale had used against Daniel had an original version on the flash drive, clearly showing the alterations. The forged signature of Daniel? Hale had practiced on at least 12 different documents before producing a convincing version. Sarah had photos of every attempt. Sarah's inflated salary contract? The original document showed a value 40% lower. Changed after it was signed. Hale had raised the amount to make it look like Daniel was wasting company money. Silence isn't neutrality. It's complicity, Sarah said to herself, remembering a phrase she had read somewhere. And I will not stay silent. She was in the middle of a particularly complicated chart when her phone rang. Mrs. Rodriguez. Sarah, mija, Lily woke up and she's crying a lot. I think she's hungry. I'm coming, Mrs. Rodriguez. Thank you for watching her. Sarah looked at the laptop screen and then at the clock. 3 in the morning. She had been working for 7 hours straight, running only on coffee and pure indignation. When she returned with Lily in her arms, the baby finally calm after a bottle, Sarah made a decision. She was going to make everything public. She opened her email and started typing a message to every journalist contact she could find online. Subject: Corporate fraud at Brooks Industries. Exclusive evidence. Dear journalists, I have documentary evidence of fraud, corporate sabotage, and conspiracy involving Vice President Marcus Hale of Brooks Industries. CEO Daniel Brooks was falsely accused as part of a scheme to seize control of the company. I have emails, altered documents, audio recordings, and forensic analysis of signatures proving all this. I am available for an exclusive interview tomorrow at 10 a.m. at the Starbucks on Newberry Street. Bring cameras. Sarah reread the message 3 times, took a deep breath and clicked send. Her phone rang almost immediately. Unknown number. Hello? Sarah Collins? This is Jennifer Walsh from the Boston Globe. I just received your email. Do you really have evidence of fraud at Brooks Industries? I have enough evidence to bring down a corrupt vice president and clear the name of an innocent CEO. Can we meet in an hour? I know it's late, but this story is huge. Sarah looked at Lily, sleeping peacefully in her arms, then at the laptop still open with all the evidence spread across the screen. An hour is perfect, but there's one condition. What is it? When you publish this, I want it made very clear. This investigation was carried out by a single mother everyone underestimated, and she is not desperate at all. When she hung up, Sarah started printing the evidence. The old printer protested, jamming on the 3rd page. Even the printer jammed. Machines have ethics too, and these documents smell rotten, she laughed, fixing the paper. At 5 in the morning, her phone rang again. This time, it was Daniel. Sarah? I saw your calls. Where did you get my private number? Long story, but I have an even longer one to tell you, and it will clear your name. What did you do? What you asked me to. I trusted you, and now the whole world will know the truth about Marcus Hale. The second emergency board meeting of Brooks Industries in 1 week felt like a final trial. But this time, Sarah Collins came armed for battle. The storm outside pounded against the windows of the Harvard Club with the same intensity as the first night when everything began, as if the universe itself was closing a dramatic circle. Sarah walked into the room carrying Lily in one hand, a laptop in the other, followed by 3 journalists with cameras that turned the private meeting into a public spectacle. Sorry for being late, she announced, parking the stroller in the middle of the solemn room. Fraud doesn't print itself. Chairman Harrison nearly choked on his coffee. Miss Collins, this is a private board meeting. These people cannot be here. Actually, they can, said Jennifer Walsh of the Boston Globe, adjusting her camera. Meetings about corporate fraud allegations are a matter of public interest, especially when they involve a company that receives tax incentives from the city. Hale, who had been sitting at the head of the table with a triumphant air, lost his color. What is going on here? Justice. Sarah replied, connecting her laptop to the projector. Ladies and gentlemen, get ready to see who really betrayed Brooks Industries. The first image on the large screen was an email from Hale to foreign investors, dated 6 months earlier. The words, confidential information and acquisition opportunity, glowed like neon. This is an invasion of privacy, Hale protested, standing up. This is evidence of a crime, Sarah shot back, moving to the next slide. This is a detailed plan on how to undermine Daniel Brooks as CEO, take control of the company, and sell it for a fraction of its true value. The silence in the room was deafening. Even the cameras seemed to pause for a moment. Sarah continued, relentless. Here we have the recording of a phone call where Mr. Hale discusses how to use me against Daniel, calling me just a desperate single mother. She played the audio. Hale's voice filled the room, each poisoned word sounding like nails in a coffin. And here, Sarah clicked to the next slide, we have forensic evidence that Marcus Hale forged Daniel's signature on at least 15 different documents. The images showed Daniel's original signatures side by side with the forged versions, with detailed analysis of pressure, angle, and ink flow differences. Harrison finally found his voice. Marcus, are these accusations true? Hale was pale as paper. This is all a setup. She has personal reasons to. This isn't a setup, it's justice, Sarah interrupted. And before you question my motives, let me be clear. I could have stayed home, gone back to my simple life, and let you destroy an innocent man. But some things are bigger than our comfort zone. Daniel, who had been called in expecting what he thought would be his final dismissal, stood at the door, watching the woman he loved methodically destroy the man who had tried to destroy them. Sarah, he said softly, how did you get all this? You told me to trust you, so I did, and he left enough evidence on that flash drive to bring down a small corrupt government. Jennifer Walsh stepped closer with her microphone. Miss Collins, what motivated you to investigate so deeply? Sarah looked directly at the camera. Because when you grow up being underestimated, you develop a compulsive need to prove people wrong, and because some lies are too big to go unpunished. Hale tried one last card. You can't judge me based on illegally obtained evidence. Actually, we can, Harrison replied, clearly shaken. Especially considering you were selling trade secrets to competitors. That's a federal crime, Marcus. The storm outside chose that moment to ease, letting rays of sunlight stream through the windows and light the room like divine spotlights. Motion to reinstate Daniel Brooks as CEO, with formal apologies, said one of the board members. Approved unanimously, Harrison declared. Daniel crossed the room toward Sarah. You saved my company. You saved my reputation. You saved. I saved both of us, Sarah interrupted, smiling. They were about to embrace when the meeting room door flew open violently. A young, arrogant man walked in, followed by a lawyer in an expensive suit. Sorry to interrupt, the man said, looking straight at Sarah. I'm Jake Morrison, Lily's biological father, and this is my lawyer, Mr. Peterson. Sarah felt her blood turn cold. Jake, what are you doing here? I came to get my daughter, he answered with a cruel smile, and to claim my share of your new fortune. After all, now that you're famous and well-connected, I think we can renegotiate our situation. The lawyer stepped forward. We have a custody petition and a retroactive child support claim. It seems Miss Collins now has the means to provide much better for the child. Sarah held Lily tightly. You can't just show up and... Actually, we can, Peterson interrupted. Especially considering the questionable circumstances of your social rise. Daniel moved between them and Sarah. What questionable circumstances? Jake smiled like a predator. Well, Mr. Brooks, it seems my ex has a talent for getting involved with powerful men whenever she needs money. 2 hours later, Sarah discovered that facing emotional blackmail in a sterile mediation room was like trying to win a war using only common sense and sarcasm. The room in the federal building in Boston smelled of disinfectant and bitter decisions. Jake sat across the oval table, radiating false confidence, while his lawyer spread papers as if they were winning cards. Sarah held Lily in her arms, feeling Daniel beside her like a silent fortress. So, Jake, Sarah began, her voice sweet as poisoned honey. After 2 years of silence, you decide to show up exactly when my life gets better. What an interesting coincidence. I'm Lily's father. I have rights, he replied, adjusting the expensive tie he had clearly bought for the occasion. "Rights?" Sarah laughed. "You disappeared when you found out I was pregnant. Your only contribution to her life was genetic material." Attorney Peterson cleared his throat. "Mr. Pat Morrison is prepared to offer financial stability that, frankly, Miss Collins could not provide until recently." "Until recently, when she got involved with a millionaire CEO," Jake added with a disgusting smile. "Impressive how you always find a way out, Sarah." Daniel finally spoke, his voice low and dangerous. "Be careful what you're suggesting." "I'm not suggesting anything. I'm stating that my ex has a pattern. When she needs money, she finds a man to solve her problems." Sarah stood up, handing Lily to Daniel. "You know, Jake, you're right about one thing. I do have a pattern. When I find toxic trash in my life, I throw it out." "Sarah, sit down," the mediator asked. "Let's keep things civil." "Civil?" Sarah turned to Jake. "Where was your civility when you left me pregnant and broke? Where was it when Lily was born premature and I spent 3 nights in the hospital alone? Where was it when she had pneumonia and I sold my car to pay for her treatment?" Jake shifted in his seat, clearly uncomfortable. "I was young. I wasn't ready." "And now you are? How convenient." Lily suddenly becomes interesting exactly when money is involved. Peterson opened a folder. "We have evidence that Miss Collins has a history of strategic relationships." Sarah grabbed the folder and flipped through it quickly. They were photos of her leaving Brooks Industries, text messages taken out of context, and private investigator reports that made her life look like a cheap thriller. "Wow," she said, handing the photos to Daniel. "You actually hired a PI to follow me. That's pathetic, even for you, Jake." Daniel studied the documents, his expression growing darker. These reports were compiled by Marcus Hale. The silence in the room was absolute. "How do you know?" Peterson asked, trying to sound casual. "Because I recognize the style. And because Marcus Hale is currently under FBI investigation for corporate fraud and conspiracy." Daniel leaned forward. "You based your legal strategy on evidence provided by a criminal." Jake turned pale. That doesn't matter. I'm still her father." "Being a mother was never my mistake. It was my miracle," Sarah said, taking Lily back. "And you? You were just a mistake that gave me the greatest gift of my life." "The court will decide," Peterson insisted, though his confidence was visibly shaken. Sarah smiled. "Actually, it won't, because I have a recorded confession from Marcus Hale admitting that you were hired to intimidate me as part of his scheme against Daniel." She played the audio on her phone. Hale's voice echoed in the room. "If the girl becomes a problem, I have ways to deal with it. I've already identified the child's father. Greedy man, easy to manipulate." Jake stood up abruptly. We need to go." "Great idea," Sarah agreed. "And Jake, if you show up in our lives again, I'll sue you for child abandonment, blackmail, and conspiracy. I have lawyers now." After they left, Sarah collapsed into the chair, trembling slightly. "It's all right," Daniel said, placing a hand on her shoulder. "It's over. For now. But there will always be another Jake, another Hale, someone trying to pull us apart." Daniel knelt in front of her. "Then how about we make sure they can't?" "How?" "Come with me. I need to show you something." 3 hours later, they were driving down Route 6 toward Cape Cod, leaving Boston's chaos behind. Sarah had agreed to spend the weekend away from everything, and Daniel had mysteriously insisted on stopping at a jewelry store along the way. The lake in Provincetown was perfect at sunset. The calm water reflected the pink and golden sky, seagulls danced in the light wind, and for the first time in weeks, Sarah felt at peace. "Beautiful place," she said, sitting on the grass with Lily playing beside her. "Sarah," Daniel began, clearly nervous, "these last few months have been the craziest of my life." "For me too. Thank you for supporting me back there at the mediation. Thank you for saving my company, my reputation, my sanity." He knelt on the grass, pulling a small box from his pocket. "Will you marry me?" Sarah stopped breathing. "Daniel? I know it's crazy. I know we met because of a wrong message and everything happened so fast. But I also know you're the most courageous, intelligent, and remarkable person I've ever met." Sarah looked at Lily, who was trying to eat a leaf, then back at Daniel, who held the ring as if his life depended on her answer. "I will," she finally said. "But the honeymoon has to include a babysitter and Wi-Fi." Daniel laughed, sliding the ring onto her finger. "Anything you want." When he kissed her, the lake breeze lifted a forgotten bridal veil from some earlier wedding, sending it dancing in the air like an ethereal blessing. "I think that's a sign," Sarah murmured against his lips. "A sign of what?" "That I finally sent the message to the right number." 6 months later, Sarah discovered that marrying a millionaire CEO in Cape Cod was exactly like in the movies, except for the part where the baby tried to eat the wedding rings during the ceremony. The afternoon sun filtered through clouds breaking after a morning rain, creating a perfect rainbow over the ocean. The small seaside chapel was decorated with wildflowers and lit by candles flickering in the salty breeze. It was intimate, it was perfect, and it was absolutely nothing like Sarah had imagined her wedding would be when she was a teenager dreaming of fairy tale princes. This was better. It was real. "Lily, sweetheart, don't chew Daddy Daniel's ring," Sarah whispered, trying to pull the band out of her 14-month-old daughter's mouth. Promoted to official ring bearer, Lily was taking the job very seriously. "She's just testing the quality," Daniel laughed, impeccable in his navy blue tuxedo. "Lily has high standards." The pastor, a kind man with a local accent, smiled patiently. "In 40 years of weddings, I've never seen a ring bearer quite so dedicated." Sarah managed to rescue the ring and handed Lily to Mrs. Rodriguez, who was sitting in the front row with tears in her eyes. The neighbor had become practically a grandmother to Lily, and Sarah couldn't imagine the ceremony without her. "Ready to continue?" the pastor asked. "More than ready," Sarah replied, taking Daniel's hands. "Daniel Edward Brooks," the pastor began, "do you take Sarah Elizabeth Collins as your wife, to love and to honor her, in joy and in sorrow, in wealth and in poverty, in sickness and in health, until death do you part?" "I do. And I take Lily too, because she's part of the package." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "That wasn't in the script. The best parts never are," Neil answered, squeezing her hands. "Sarah Elizabeth Collins, do you take Daniel Edward Brooks as your husband, to love and to honor him, in joy and in sorrow, in wealth and in poverty, in sickness and in health, until death do you part?" "I do. But if he ever tries to boss me around like an employee, I revoke everything." Laughter echoed through the small chapel. Even Lily clapped her hands, clearly approving the comment. After the exchange of rings and a kiss that made the candles flicker even harder, Daniel asked for permission to speak. "Before we head to the party," he began, taking the pastor's microphone, "I want to make an announcement. Sarah taught me that privilege without purpose is wasted. That's why I'm establishing the Sarah Collins Brooks Foundation, dedicated to supporting single mothers and funding clean energy projects in underserved communities." Sarah stared at him, surprised. "You didn't tell me this." "I wanted it to be a wedding surprise. The first donation will be $5 million. "Daniel, that's the least I can do. You saved me from becoming just another rich, empty businessman. Now, I want to save others." Mrs. Rodriguez was openly crying. Lily was trying to eat the microphone, and Sarah was trying to process that her new husband had just named a charity foundation after her. "The future is what we build, together," she finally said, echoing something she had once read. "Exactly. And if the light fails, we'll shine it with our name," Daniel replied, making a reference to the family's energy company. "That was awful," Sarah laughed, "but I love you anyway." The final kiss was cinematic. The sun broke fully through the clouds at that exact moment, illuminating the couple like a divine spotlight. The waves rolled gently on the beach behind them, seagulls flew in perfect formation, and for a moment it felt like the entire universe had conspired to create the perfect ending. That's when Lily decided she had been quiet long enough. "Mama!" she shouted, throwing a pen she had found from who knows where directly at the pastor's head. The object bounced, hit the microphone, and sent it crashing to the floor with an electronic thud that made everyone jump. "Lily Brooks!" Sarah laughed, rushing to grab her daughter. "You cannot attack people with office supplies." "Technically, she's now Lily Brooks Collins," Daniel corrected, helping the pastor up. "And apparently she inherited your talent for creating chaos in formal situations." "Wonderful. Now we have two experts at ruining important meetings," Mrs. Rodriguez added, wiping away tears from laughing so hard. Sarah lifted Lily in her arms and turned to the few guests present. "Well, everyone, I think this makes our marriage official. Chaos included, lifetime guarantee." "Toast!" Daniel raised a glass of champagne. To the most unlikely, bravest, and loudest family in Boston. To text messages sent to the wrong number, Sarah added. To happy endings no one saw coming, Mrs. Rodriguez shouted. And to pens as weapons of celebration, the pastor finished, rubbing the spot on his forehead where he had been hit. As the sun set over Cape Cod, painting the sky gold and pink, Sarah looked at her new family. Daniel at her side, Lily in her arms, Mrs. Rodriguez laughing like a proud grandmother, and realized that sometimes the best fairy tales begin with wrong text messages and end with babies throwing office supplies at pastors. And she wouldn't change a single moment of this wonderful madness. Lily, as if she knew she was the center of attention, let out a crystal-clear laugh and reached for another pen from Daniel's pocket. "Oh no," Sarah said quickly. "1 pen per wedding is the limit." But it was already too late. The second pen flew straight into the wedding cake, and everyone laughed until they couldn't breathe anymore. Hey everyone! What did you think of this wild journey of Sarah and Daniel? From the wrong number that changed 2 lives forever to this ending full of love and flying pens? Share your thoughts in the comments. Which moment touched you the most? Their first meeting, the discovery of the fraud, or maybe the proposal by the lake? On a scale of 0 to 10, what score would you give this unlikely love story? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell to get more touching stories like this. See you next time, and remember, sometimes the best destinations start with the most unexpected mistakes.